Wow. Firstly, thank you very much for turning up tonight to come and listen to me and Danny. I can't tell you how amazing it is to step into a room knowing that people don't think you're fucking mad. But it is, but do you know what the amazing thing I find about it is the energy when you step into a room of people like you is way up here. You know, I can walk into a room and I've got to a stage now where, you know, we talk about intuition and things, and you kind of, when you meet somebody, you know pretty much within the first 30 seconds whether you're going to like them or not. I kind of get that feeling now, and I can almost tell now, and it's really odd, within about a minute of talking to someone, I pretty much know if they're jabbed or not. It's fucking amazing. I don't know, it's been a wild 4 years for me, I've got to tell you. I don't know how many of you know kind of the story that I've been through, but for those of you who don't, I'll try and go through it as quickly as I can. So in February of 2020, I had a very nice job working on Sky Sports, sitting watching football for 6 hours every Saturday afternoon and getting paid for it. It was amazing. Was doing that for about 15 years, and then kind of February 2020 I went out for dinner just when things had started to kind of come into the news about this virus in China, and I went out for dinner with a couple of guys in my village who were doctors, and they'd been privy to the data from the Diamond Princess cruise ship very early on in the pandemic, and I was asking them about what was it about this virus, and they said, well, to be honest, he said, you haven't got anything to worry about. He said, this is only going to affect really old people or people who have already got or immunocompromised. And I was like, oh, okay. So I wasn't particularly worried. And it's been really odd because obviously you then saw the propaganda get ramped up. And I saw some videos come out of China with a couple of people falling down in the streets. Did we all see that? Now, I don't know about you. That was my moment when I went, fuck me, that's not right. And I can pinpoint that moment as the moment where I went, I'm calling bullshit on all this right now. And so the propaganda gets ramped up, and you start talking about going into lockdowns and everything. And obviously, I'm working on the mainstream media, and I was quite vocal on social media talking about the government and why are they doing these stupid measures, and obviously this wasn't going down very well with my employers because I was criticising the mainstream media, and there I was working in it. However, I was in the sports department, Sky Sports, so I didn't think that really had anything to do with Sky News because I was slagging off Sky News something rotten on my social media. I mean, from a career point of view, it probably wasn't the best thing I could have done. But and to this day, I don't have a single regret about calling out the mainstream media because they have been disgusting and a massive part of what we've been through in my opinion. So anyway, my story continued. The football season got curtailed, so I wasn't working, which meant I just sat at home on the internet, looking into the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, watching the Fall of the Cabal series. Obviously, I had too much time on my hands, and I watched the whole fucking lot in one go because I was transfixed. Right? I was like, everything that I'd ever thought of. I'd always been a little bit suspicious of politicians and all that shit. 9/11 Dodge. Always been a bit suspicious of that, and it was just like all these things coming, and the Fall of the Cabal. And I'm watching this series, and I'm going, oh my god, I thought it was bad. It's fucking way worse than that. And so I was like, what can we do about this? We've got to do something. We can't just sit here and do nothing. So there I was on my social media. My 500,000 Twitter followers were getting it full throttle. And this is when I came into contact with, probably for the first time in my life, really, I experienced the social media pylons, and I started realising that, okay, some people don't like what I'm saying here. Just guessing. I reckon about 95% of my posts in those early days were basically slagging me off, conspiracy theorist, all the usual nonsense that we went through. And about 5% of people were going, oh, well done, well done. And I was like, okay. But I believed in what I just felt something was not right. And I felt something was not right, and I had to speak out about it. And as I continued down the line, the George Floyd thing happened in America. And I went into work when the football season started back up in the summer. Went into work, and the first day we went back, about 30 seconds before we were due to go on air, the producer of the show gave us all a Black Lives Matter badge to wear on the show. And I looked at the producer and I went, do I have to wear that? And he looked at me and he went, it's probably in your best interest if you do. And I was like, and we're just about to go on air. So I was like, shit, right. So I put it on. The whole afternoon, I felt so uncomfortable, because during those hours of research, sat in my house doing buck all, I looked into what the Black Lives Matter stood for. And I'd done that about 2 or 3 weeks before, and I wasn't happy. Didn't agree with anything. And so for me, that in itself is a racist movement, if you ask me. And so at the end of the show, I took the badge off, and the producer came in the studio, and I gave him the badge, and I went, I will not be wearing that badge again. I said, I've been uncomfortable all afternoon, don't agree with what they stand for, I won't be wearing that badge again. If you want me to wear a kick racism out, or the badges that we normally would wear one weekend a season when they have the campaign, I said, I'll wear anything like that, not wearing that badge ever again. So that caused a bit of a stir. I was the first person on Sky to refuse to wear it. And eventually, a few weeks later, because all the presenters were wearing them, and eventually a few weeks later, they kind of phased them out a little bit, and then they stopped altogether. So I felt like that was a bit of a victory. However, there was more to come. The football season was trying to start back up again, and every week, I don't know if you remember, every week they'd be testing everybody in the Premier League, all the staff and the players and everything, and there was about 1,000 tests done a week. And at the end of every week, the Premier League would announce how many positive tests there'd been. And every week they go, oh, well, there's been 6 or 7 tests this week positive, but they wouldn't tell you which clubs they'd come from. And so the only way you could find out is if the clubs themselves actually came out and admitted it. And so you would get the Premier League announcement, 6 or 7 cases, following day, the clubs that would say, oh yes, 3 of those were ours, 2 of those were ours. And it was really interesting, because I started noticing a bit of a trend. And that was that all the teams that were either in the bottom 3 of the Premier League or just above it, who had a vested interest in the season being curtailed and stopped completely and started afresh the next year for more money, they were the ones that were coming out and going, yes, we've got positive COVID cases. So I put out a tweet, and it went something like this. I put, isn't it a strange coincidence that the only clubs that are admitting to COVID cases are the ones actually in the relegation zone or just above it? And that was my tweet. Following day, I get a phone call from the head of football at Sky. Matt, we've had a complaint about you. No shit. He said, there's a CEO at one of the football clubs who's not happy about the tweet that you did yesterday. And I went, all right, which one? I was fucking doing 20 a day. So he said the one about the teams in the relegation zone. And I went, all right. I said, have you got it there in front of you? He went, yeah, I have. I said, can you read it to me? So he read it to me. And I went, right. I said, is there anything factually incorrect in that tweet? And he paused for a minute and he went, no. And I went, why are you ringing me then? And I refused to take it down, because that's what he'd asked me to do. I went, it's factually correct, I ain't taking it down. And 4 weeks later, I was sacked. So there you go. I got a phone call. I got a Zoom call. Didn't know it was coming. I mean, I kind of knew it was coming, but I didn't know it was coming. So I was asked to go on a Zoom call with the head of football at Sky a week before the season started, and under the pretext of talking about the following season. And so I jump on the Zoom call, and as soon as I get on there, it's not just the head of football at Sky, it's another guy who I've never seen before, obviously from HR. And within 30 seconds of the Zoom call starting, he said, "Matt, I'm sorry, really sorry. This after 15 years of service to Sky." He went, "I'm really sorry, but there's no more work for you at Sky." And I went, "Oh, okay." I said, "Can I just ask you a question?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "Has this sacking got anything to do with what I've been posting on social media?" And he went, "Well," he said, "we do have to take into account the reputation of our company." And I went, "Oh, that's interesting." I said, "Because you didn't seem too interested in the reputation of your company after you re-employed Jamie Carragher when he spat at a young girl when he was in his car." And he went, "Well, we can't talk about other people." And I went, "Yeah, funny that." So he then went, "Oh, this is the other petty, annoying thing that the mainstream media do." I had 7 months left on my contract, and he was very generous. He went, "Now, under the terms of your contract, we're only due to pay you 3 months, really." He said, "But as as it's only a week before the season starts, you're highly unlikely to get any other work." He said, "We'll give you 6 months." And I was like, "I've only got 7 months left on my contract. Why don't you just pay me 7 months? I've been there 15 years and you're going to nick a month's pay off me." So I went, "6 months?" He went, "Yeah." I went, "Right, okay." So what I did was, when he sent me the letter to actually sign it to confirm that I was agreeing to all the points, one of the points was that I wasn't allowed to talk about the sacking for 2 years. Yeah. So I got my solicitor and I wrote back to them and I went, "Take that clause out and I'll sign it." And they took the clause out, so I was allowed to speak about it. Well done. I wasn't allowed to talk badly about Sky for 2 years, but I was allowed to say factually what had happened in the interview. So that's what I did for 2 years. I stuck to the facts, and now I can tell you just how shit they are. So the great thing about that was, obviously, I waited to send my solicitor's letter back to them just long enough so that the next month's wages were paid into my account. And then I got the last 6 months of my contract, so bollocks to them. So that was the first battle. Anyway, I was out of work. And then, obviously, this is August 2020. Get the timelines right. So now we are heading towards the vaccine rollout, the miraculous jibby-jabby that is going to save the planet, which was developed in a staggering 9 months. Amazing. Now, this was the next thing that I became a little bit outspoken about, and I basically told everyone that I wasn't going to take it very early on because, and my reasoning for not taking it, and I never said I would never take it full stop. I didn't go that far because I didn't want to be backed into a corner. So I said, I'm not going to be taking this vaccine because there's no long-term safety data on it. And until I've seen that long-term safety data, I ain't putting that in my body. And that was my stance right from the get-go. And 3.5 years later, I'm still not regretting that decision. I think one of the biggest red flags for me was that my spidey senses were alerted when, I don't know if anybody noticed, but they had to change the actual definition of the word vaccine to actually be able to call these gene therapies a vaccine. So I've had plenty of arguments on social media.
What did they have to do?
They had to change the definition of what a vaccine was for this vaccine to be able to call it, also for the gene therapies to be able to be called a vaccine.
Right.
So they had to change the definition because this gene therapy did not match the dictionary definition of 2020.
Okay.
So that's what they had to do. And that was when I went, No, not for me, thank you. And obviously I'd also gone down a few rabbit holes, and a few of the people that had kind of predicted what was going to happen in terms of mandatory vaccines, in terms of getting rid of cash, in terms of central bank digital currencies, started talking about it in 2020, and I was like, oh, that seems a bit extreme. And then as the time was going on, I'm going, okay, now he was right. He was right about that. He was right about that. Hang on a minute. So I was all in. And yeah, at one point, I'll be honest, my family did think I was mad. I was just talking to Danny about that just now. They actually called a family Zoom meeting. Anyone else have one of them? Fucking hell. A family Zoom meeting to discuss my mental state, apparently. So that was interesting, and apparently I did give a wrong answer to a question that I was asked by my family when they said to me, would you rather save just us or 7 billion people on the planet? Apparently 7 billion people on the planet was the wrong answer. I don't know. Don't get me wrong, I love my family. I love my family, but 7 billion people, come on. The planet's got to go on. So that was the wrong answer, and I had to apologise for that. Sometimes honesty isn't always the best policy. Took a bit of coming back from that, but anyway, the be-all and end-all is that obviously my family back in Guernsey, not so much my wife. My wife was kind of semi-awake, and but my family back in Guernsey were considerably worried about me, and so were my mates. I played golf with 3 guys every week at my golf club. 3 guys are a little bit older than me. One of them's a policeman, ex-policeman. And they all thought I was mad, seriously thought I was mad. And about a year after the vaccine rollout, 2 of them came up to me on the same day, separate of each other. They didn't know that they'd both spoken to me that day. They came both to me and said, Matt, we're really sorry. They said, we thought you were mad a year ago, but we see what's happening, and we're really sorry that we didn't believe you a year ago. And that was a big moment for me. 2 of my best mates, obviously the ex-policeman, who's still very, shall we say, asleep. Obviously been indoctrinated into the system through the police force for 30 years as well, and still believes everything the government tells them. But we're still mates. And I think that's the important thing. We've been able to have really quite heated discussions sometimes, because, you know, I've got strong opinions, he's got strong opinions, and we clashed a little bit. But at the end of that, we always shook hands and went, oh, well, never mind, we disagree, we'll see you tomorrow on the golf course. And that's how life should be. You can have disagreements. Definitely what I found is you're not going to be able to save everyone. I think that's the big message. I think a lot of times people don't respond well to facts. They're very emotion based in what they believe in, and facts do not get through. And so I had to adapt very early on the way that I spoke to people, the way that I spoke to people who were different opinions to me. And I didn't give them facts anymore. I stopped giving them facts. I stopped it because it wasn't resonating at all. And instead, I adopted a different tack, and I just started asking them questions. I asked them questions which made them feel very uncomfortable. And not always did they reply straight away, but the seed had been planted, and when they were at home, sat on their own, thinking about it, maybe they just thought a little bit about what the question and the answer to that question might be. And I found that was a much better way and a much less confrontational way to try and get through to people. Because, you know, we've all had instances in our lives where we've completely disagreed with somebody, and you know you're right, or you feel like you're right, and you feel like you've got the fact on your side, but it just doesn't get through. And sometimes we just have to try and change tack and use a different tactic to get through. You know, maybe I learned that from my football days. You know, one thing isn't working, you've got to try a different trick to get past somebody. You know, he might be quicker than you, so try a different way. And that's kind of what I found early on. And It's been an incredibly rocky journey, but I can tell you now, stood here in 2024, that now the stuff that I post online now, when I told you before was 95% negative in response to me, that has flipped around. Completely flipped around to 90% in my favour now. 90%. And I think we all kind of get a sense of it. I think sometimes, as Danny said, we sometimes, you know, you get a little bit low energy and, you know, bad days and good days. But I think I also have a sense that the tide is turning and that we are making a difference. You know, I've found one of the greatest things that I found during the really dark days, you know, when they brought masks in and everybody had them on. I took great delight in walking into a shop, the only one without a mask on, and I walked in with the biggest smile on my face. I couldn't have been nicer to every fucker in a mask. And I let them see just how good their life could be if they were like me. And I think that's one of the most important things I want to try and give to you guys, is to keep your vibration high, keep your energy levels high. You know, don't let the bastards grind you down. It's one of my favourite sayings. I will never let them grind me down. I've been at this for 4 years now, taking abuse left, right, and centre on social media, and to this day, it's water off a duck's back. They will never ever grind me down. If they think that we're going to give up, they do not know how stubborn I fucking am. Ask my wife. She'll tell you. So I think, yeah, I want to give positive messages out because I think we are getting somewhere. We are definitely winning. And Danny said, I think there's changes afoot. And there are battles ahead, don't get me wrong. And there's still plenty of those. But we will survive and we will prosper. And I think what you're doing here, Katie, by the way, is absolutely amazing. What you guys have put on here is absolutely superb. If I lived in this area, I'd be living here. I mean, my wife might take a bit of convincing, I've got to be honest. But I definitely like the homeschooling thing. I think that, I mean, I've had several arguments with the wife about that, but my daughter's just kind of getting to the end of it, and I'm just hoping that we've educated her enough not to be taken in by the bullshit in mainstream schools. And we've taught her to think for herself. I was so proud of her. I think it was last year. She came back from school one day and she said, Dad, when the headmaster comes into our class, she said, we have to stand up. Yeah. And I went, all right, do you? She went, no. And I said to her, go and ask your teacher, your form teacher, go and ask her why you have to stand up when the head teacher comes in. And so following day, she went in to ask her teacher, and the teacher couldn't give her an answer. Telling, isn't it? Yeah. So I'm very proud of her. I've taught her to think for herself, and that was one of my finest moments, I think, when she came back from school that day. And I thought, yeah, that's my girl. And she's only 14. She's 15 in a couple of weeks. God help me. But no, could be more proud of her.
Have you had any current pros or ex-pros that have approached you in confidence, asking you, agreeing with you, but don't want to speak out?
Yeah, good question. So the answer is yes. The simple answer is yes. And there's been quite a lot of people that have messaged me privately saying thanks very much. I agree with everything you say, but I've got a job and I don't want to lose it. And I kind of get that way of thinking, but it wasn't for me. For me, this was a question of doing what's right. That's all it is, really. Doing what's right. Wanting to, as Danny said, leave a better place for your children to grow up in. And so for me, staying silent wasn't an option. I couldn't do that, but there has been plenty, and a lot of high-profile ones as well. So very early on, we kind of, all the people that were against lockdowns and all that shit, the proper freedom fighters, we organised some WhatsApp groups, as I'm sure we've all in, and a couple of interesting additions that joined the WhatsApp groups and then left very quickly afterwards. So one of them I can tell you was Gary Neville, who obviously thinks that his job is more important than doing what's right. So champagne socialist, twat. And the other interesting one, who had a massive reach in terms of social media presence, was Davina McCall, who joined and left very quickly. Obviously had their agents onto them, telling them not to be so silly, because obviously the agents were worried about the commissions that they were going to be getting, so they were talking their clients into not speaking out about stuff that they disagree with. And so there's been a lot, and I had an issue with I didn't speak about it in the chat just now, but I think we all noticed a lot of professional sports people after the vaccine rollout started having heart problems on pitches and medical emergencies in the crowd at football matches. So I was calling for an investigation because I could see a huge rise in the amount of incidents that were taking place. I had 17 years as a professional footballer, and I never saw one person in 17 years have a heart issue on the pitch or in training. That's 5 days a week for 17 years. Not one.
With the jabs themselves, would it be a club doctor that would administer it, or would it be external?
It was probably the club doctor, although I don't know for sure. I know that the physios and the doctors were heavily coercing the players to get jabbed.
What about the actual passports themselves, for them to play abroad and all that sort of stuff?
Well, it was quite telling actually. In pre-season of 2021, I think it was, 21-22. So most clubs would go abroad for a pre-season tour. And it was quite interesting. If you knew your football and you followed those tours, quite a lot of players missed those tours because they couldn't get into the countries where they went because they weren't vaccinated. I played golf with two current Premier League footballers in the summer of 22, I think it was. I mean, the last 4 years has just scrambled him up. But I spoke individually with both of them on the way round. They were at two separate football clubs, and both of them told me that, given that the media were telling us that 95% of the players were vaccinated, or in Jurgen Klopp's case, 99% of the Liverpool players, both these players said to me it was about 50-50 in their change rooms. That's very different to what the mainstream media were telling us. And we were told so many lies about the amount of people that were vaccinated they just tried to make you feel like you were in the tiny minority and you were mad. But they obviously didn't.
And you could get a lollipop if you had one.
And you could get a lollipop or a donut or a prostitute in one country, wasn't there? Couldn't remember what country, otherwise I'd have fucking gone. So anyway, sorry, my last point on that is I put together a letter with Dr. Claire Craig, Asim Malhotra helped me with it. We put together a letter to send to the PFA and the FA to call for an investigation as to why people are dropping down on the pitch more often. And I text about 100 ex-footballers that were in my phone book and asked them if they would co-sign the letter with me. And there was only 2 of those players that said they wouldn't sign it.
Would it? Oh, that's good.
98 went, yes, we've seen it and we want to know why.
Who are the 2 that did?
Who were the 2? Yeah. Funny enough, I didn't have Gary Lineker's number in my phone book. I don't know why. But one of them was still employed by a Premier League football club as an ambassador at Crystal Palace. And who was the other one? I think the other one was still involved as a coach at a Premier League club, so he didn't want to get involved. But 98 out of 100 I thought was pretty good. So yeah. So the letter was sent to the FA. We managed to get on the back of it a Zoom call with the FA and the doctor at the FA. Um, they specifically said to me, you can have a Zoom call with us to discuss this, with Asim Malhotra on the call as well, because Asim had some data that had shown that there'd been this rise, and they said you can have a Zoom call with us on one condition: you can't talk about what's been spoken about in the call. So that's pretty telling in itself. So we had the meeting, we had the Zoom meeting, and Asim put his points across. The FA doctor had 2 cardiologists on their side to counter everything that Asim was saying. So it was all pretty cordial. I could tell that the cardiologists all knew each other. In fact, one of the surnames, I'm not sure if they were related, but one of the surnames of the other cardiologist was a Malhotra. But they all they'd obviously known each other. And so the meeting ended, and every time after that meeting I saw in the media any other footballer that had collapsed on the pitch, I would pop it in an email and send it to the doctor at the FA and just go, there's another one, there's another one. And in November 22, I had an email back after I'd sent another one of these things, and the doctor at the FA said to me, thanks for keeping us informed, Matt. As you know, which I didn't, as you know, professional footballers in England are no longer being advised to have any more COVID jabs. And I was like, well, I didn't know. Where was the announcement? You were quick to announce it when they were all having them, weren't you? But now you're advising them not to. Nobody said a dicky bird, except for this lady in an email to me. And I've got the email on my phone if anyone wants any proof of that. Well, they were talking about vaccine passports and not being able to travel without having vaccinations. I'd actually come to terms with the fact that I was never going to leave England ever again. The one question I get asked the most is probably from normies is when you try and tell them, they go, what can we do about it? And I'm like, well, there's 2 things you can do. I said, because you might think that you as an individual, by doing a little bit, is not going to make much of a difference. But if you do your little bit, and 7 billion of us on the planet all do the same, if we all say no, if we all do not comply, and we do not live our life in fear, we win all day long. And I think that's the message that I want to leave you with. Thank you very much.